let's see if she flies. So you're probably wondering, how did I get to the point to actually get this plane in the air? Well, let's go over all the mistakes I made and what I did to correct it. So the first thing we're going to start off with is getting this wing out of the way. The first mistake I had was putting the propeller on backwards, which many of my viewers pointed out in my comments, and thank y'all for that. And whenever I was putting it together, I couldn't figure out how to make it spin the proper direction, and me just not thinking it all the way through, all I had to do was take this propeller, take it off, literally flip it 180 degrees, put it back on. So on the propeller here, you can see on how this nice flush edge is. That's how it's actually supposed to spin, to cut into the air and give it the smoothest run. The way I had it on previously, I had the sharp edge actually flipped and spinning like, well, spinning the other direction, but spinning into the wind, which doesn't give it as smooth of an operation. But all I had to do was take the blade off, literally turn it, put it back on, tighten it back down, and I also got a new blade, obviously, because my other one was cut in half. After getting the propeller put on there properly, the next thing was to figure out my stability issue whenever I was in the air. If you noticed, whenever I would go to fly, it would kind of go up and tilt either to the right or to the left, I think mostly to the right. And I kept making comments in the video on how the controller just felt very sensitive to it, or either I was just slightly hitting it over. This is actually a sign of the plane being very tail heavy on it. So let me show y'all that. How am I going to show y'all the balance of the plane? It's actually a pretty simple device here called a CG balancer. Mine is a very old model that I bought offline, so I can adjust it here for different size of planes. And my joints up here, I actually had to use a different ball joint here than what originally came with it. Mine was missing a few parts, though it was new in box. But I rigged it all up so we can do this. Had to custom 3D print a few extra parts for it, which I'll show here. This is the custom 3D parts that I printed. So everything that is the purple or pink, however it shows up on your screen, is what I had to print. So I had to make the little ball socket here just a little bit bigger of a hole so it actually would balance properly. And this is a measuring rod, so you can measure on your wing where the perfect distance is for CG. And this will just set right on the wing, not to damage it, with a little foam pad up top. And we'll show you on how that all works. Obviously, the first thing I need to do is actually put my wing back onto my plane here. So let me get the wing put back on, then we'll start setting it up. With the wing back on, we're gonna set it on the balancer. Now, where should you set it on your wing? This older model plane, I couldn't find any paperwork to give me exact measurements or where I need to put it on the wing. So rule of thumb is generally just going through the thickest part of the wing, because that's what takes the most force or most weight whenever it's actually flying. So I've kind of just felt my way across the wing, and on the wing here, you can see that centerline piece of tape. That is actually going to be pretty close to where my CG is for this plane, give or take a little bit, and that's also where I'm going to be putting my foam pads at. This is a little bit finicky, so what I try to do is kind of set it up here first and figure out where I need it to be. Another key factor to this is you need to load out your plane as if it's going to be flying. So I've got my original battery that I was using that I'm just going to stick in the front up here. I'm not going to plug it in. I'm just going to put everything weighted where it needs to be. So this would be very similar to the original flight that y'all saw in my last video, at least weight wise. And all I do is put these on there. And I actually measured mine so that way I make sure I hit the same spot each time with these little rods, as you can see here. And the reason I'm holding it is because every time I go to let it go, you can see it kind of, oh man, I don't know if it'll stay. I think it almost touches. There we go. As you can see here, my plane is quite tail heavy with the stock battery that I was originally using in it. Pretty sharp incline. So this will cause the plane to actually pitch up, and then once it gets to a certain pitch, it'll stall and then come, oh man. Well, as you can see, the plane's not very stable on there with it being pitched up. So what I'm going to do now is add a little bit of extra weight to the front of mine. Now you could, if your electronics were heavy enough, you could just slide your electronics closer to the nose, which will give it more nose weight. Unfortunately, most of my electronics are very lightweight that are in this, and I already tried that and it didn't really affect anything. So my first attempt here is this lead piece of weight. I'm gonna stick it up here in the front, and then I'm gonna reset my plane back up on my feet here. That right there is much more level than what we had before. So as we can see, we're still a little bit tail, just a slight bit, so we could add a little bit more weight up front. All in all, this is how you balance the plane. Like now we're pretty level with it. But I did a little bit of digging around. Let me move this out of the way. What that did was gave me a weight. So using these two parts of the lead weight and the battery gave me a weight that I know I need for the nose of it. So I did a little bit of digging around through my batteries that I have laying around, and out of my WL toys I have this battery. So this is a 2,200 milliamp battery, so this should give me more flight time, and it's slightly more heavier than what the lead weight and this little battery is together, which will give me just a little bit more weight on the front of the nose, which should bring me out. The only issue was fitting it into the plane. On the plane here, we've got this foam insert on the back, and there used to be a foam in the front. So I had to remove the complete foam, and then I had to actually modify that piece of foam. As you can see, I cut it out to fit around the servo so it wouldn't hit and protect. And what this is gonna allow me to do is be able to put this bigger battery in there. For one, it fits in there snug, so that way it doesn't actually shift around or anything like that whenever I'm flying, unlike this lead weight would do of shifting forwards and back, side to side, which could cause some strange flight stuff. So let's get this battery put in there, and then we're gonna put it back on the balancer and see what it does. So let's set it up on our balancer one more time. I'm gonna turn it a little bit more to me this time, so that way it's easier for me to set this plane on there. So this is the hardest part, is getting these little things, and these little arms that I'm using aren't necessarily needed, but I like it because it gives me more precise location, and then I can match each side of the plane exactly. So I like having the arms, but there's a lot of people that will just use like their thumbs and hold it and kind of balance it. As you can see, that is pretty level. Like, it's almost straight level, just a tinge maybe back. Preferably, a lot of them would want nose heaviness to it, but I'm going to leave mine pretty much as level as I can get until I can get used to this. And then I can dial it in a little bit more depending on how my flight is. Let's get back outside and let's finish off that test flight so y'all can see this thing fly finally. Oh no! All right, let's try that again. Well, we got it into the air. At least you flew this time, and in the air for a pretty good amount of time. Now it's all gonna come down to me learning how to fly. But as we can see, I've got a pretty big chunk here missing of my wing. I'm probably not going to be able to fly this anymore today. I'm going to have to order a new wing. But for now, at least we know that the balancing was the issue. Now I've just got to get better at controlling the plane. So, if y'all like this video, please like and subscribe down below. And I'll try to get this repaired, and we'll see if we can take it on a little bit longer flight time than what I just did. But it's in the air now, and I'm slowly getting better at flying these planes. Y'all have a good one.